when Lindsay was telling me about it this morning, she's like, yeah, I just rolled up to the golf course, body under arm, golf.
I was so used to it. It was like having a backpack for the last 2 weeks.
So for anyone who's watching who doesn't have kids, who says, this is never going to happen to me, this will happen. We were all cool once.
Yes.
We really were.
Correct.
And then you bring a potty to the golf course. It happens. Life gets real. Hey, this morning we've got some thunderstorms rolling through eastern Ontario, southern Quebec. So right around the capital region, it is a stormier start to the day. Now, in behind that, you can see there's a wee bit of drizzle and patchy fog, mainly cloudy sky otherwise, but that will clear to give way to a nicer day ahead. So here's how today progresses. You can see as we head into the afternoon, generally it's pretty sunny across northern Ontario, central Quebec, and then portions of Atlantic Canada. But we maintain a thunderstorm risk this afternoon, particularly through southern Quebec and then into Atlantic Canada. For eastern Ontario as well, I'd likely say thunderstorms are possible from Kingston east towards Ottawa, but west of that, I think the Toronto area will likely stay a little more sunnier than this computer model is indicating. Now, as we head into Tuesday, generally, it gets pretty quiet, at least for the morning. Lots of sunshine across southern Ontario. In fact, Tuesday begins a very nice stretch of hot weather from Windsor all the way up towards North Bay. North of that, through the Timmins area, we could have a few showers for Tuesday morning. Then a whole lot of cloud as we head through southern Quebec and into Atlantic Canada. And the areas with cloud tomorrow morning will likely become wetter as we head into the afternoon. We've got a thunderstorm risk mid-afternoon Tuesday through the eastern townships up towards Quebec City and southern Nova Scotia as well. Now, that rain will likely persist through much of Tuesday, through Nova Scotia, sliding up towards Halifax, and then possibly Cape Breton. Into Wednesday, the hot weather continues across eastern Canada, but it does become a little more unsettled into the afternoon. So that's pretty well the next risk of thunderstorm, widespread thunderstorms. So there's the activity this morning, and you can see there's some pockets of pretty heavy downpours. When we get into the yellows and the reds intensity with our radar, you know that the rain is falling pretty decently. So if you are commuting through this morning, you might want to maybe wait about 10-15 minutes if you can, because they are moving rapidly eastward. Now, in terms of the Ontario forecast, you can see the thunderstorm risk is pretty well isolated to Ottawa, Niagara possibly seeing a thunderstorm, and then up towards Thunder Bay as well. There's a bit of unsettled weather this morning. Otherwise, it is dry and hot. Some of the hottest temperatures in our country are going to be in southern Quebec for today, with 27 on deck for Quebec City. And Atlantic Canada, we've got some thunderstorm risk. St. John, know that you likely will see a bit of drizzle mixed in with that partly cloudy sky. Otherwise, 22 today in St. John's, Newfoundland, and 26 in Gander. Now, here's a look at your local forecast. Morning. Here's where we're at to start us off with our upper air pattern. This is where we begin, because so often I've been talking about how we have a trough in the east and a ridge in the west. And you see the opposite forming this morning. We've got a bit of a trough over the northern Alberta into Saskatchewan as well, and then a minor ridge over Ontario with a trough forming further east from that. But what we see happening over the next couple of days is a move towards more of a zonal pattern. You see our jet stream kind of leveling out right across the country. And when this happens, we enter into a period of more benign weather, where we'll likely see things kind of stable out, kind of mellow out right across the country. So for eastern Canada, where it has been so active with so many thunderstorms, so much rainfall over the last little while, and very fluctuating temperatures, that really comes to an end this week, at least for now, at least for the next 5 days or so. So in terms of current temperature, if you're about to head out the door, we've got a wide spread across the country. Thunder Bay sitting at a measly 5. We've got 20 degrees right now in Toronto, 17 in Ottawa, 14 for Halifax. We jump further west. You see Winnipeg sitting at 23, 9 in Calgary, and 8 degrees in Prince George, 14 for Vancouver. So it really depends on where you're waking up. If it is in the east, northwest Ontario prepping for some rain that's pushing across southern Manitoba. And then we've got thunderstorms that are still pushing through eastern Ontario and southern Quebec this morning. So that's where we've got some lightning strikes just departing Lake Ontario, and then in between Ottawa and Montreal, some rainfall this morning. So if you are in Atlantic Canada, the storms that are in eastern Ontario are pushing your way later on today. There's the possibility of some scattered thunderstorms, particularly in New Brunswick and Nova Scotia as well. Otherwise, pretty cloudy, say for Labrador. Lab City today, 24 degrees and sunshine. Heading over to Quebec, you can see the possibility of some active weather into the afternoon, but sunnier further north. And then Ontario, we've got a few showers that our computer model wants to give us, but I think today will be mainly sunny across southern Ontario, and then that possibility of some wetter weather for northwest. Who puts chicken in your omelet?
It's an option.
Not an option on my
Okay, let's move on to weather this morning. Oh, that's weird. I'm weirded out. We've got the risk of some thunderstorms this afternoon as we head through New Brunswick, Nova Scotia as well. Not everywhere we'll see a storm by any means, but just keep that in mind, particularly for the western side of Nova Scotia. You've got the risk of storms. Even Halifax, I would say, it's in your forecast for today. Fairly cloudy otherwise, and we are seeing some drizzle and fog around St. John, New Brunswick this morning. A lot of cloud up towards Newfoundland and more sunshine in Labrador. There's the risk of some thunderstorms pretty well through the day in southern Quebec. We are already seeing that activity between Ottawa and Montreal, but even into the eastern townships later on and up towards Quebec City, that risk of active weather for this afternoon. Further north into central Quebec, more sunshine. Into Ontario, we've got the risk of a few showers across northern Ontario, plus into northwestern Ontario. There's some thunderstorms moving in from Manitoba, so keep that in mind. So Thunder Bay, Dryden, you've got the risk of storms later on today. Southern Ontario, there's some fog and drizzle this morning, but it should give way to more sunshine. These are the coolest temperatures of the week. It does improve into Tuesday. Winnipeg this morning, right around southern Manitoba, we've got some pretty hefty thunderstorms, but this afternoon 28 and a mix of sun and cloud, 26 in Brandon. Sunshine and cooler temperatures heading into Saskatchewan and even more so into Alberta. And I wouldn't be surprised if the smoke coming from the Banff National Park wildfires and also the fires in BC, that's part of what's inhibiting the warm-up in Alberta for today. 21 today in Calgary, 18 in Edmonton. Hot into the interior once again, 23 in Vancouver. You just heard in our headlines, no sign of rain really in the foreseeable future. There's a chance of showers kind of midweek in Vancouver, but that's about it. So poor air quality advisories across much of the interior and into Alberta as well. Through the day today, visibility will improve in Alberta, but you know if you are tuning in from that area through southern Alberta that the haze is quite substantial from all of the fires to the west. Now coming up in the next half hour, we'll detail where in the country we have heat warnings. You'll be surprised, it's pretty far north. Now we'll send it over to Ben. Speaking of Winnipeg today, some of the hottest weather in our country this morning has been in Manitoba. Winnipeg today getting up into the high 20s. Now we are seeing a shift in our upper air pattern in comparison to last week. Remember last week I was talking about this beautiful ridge we had over the west that was actually contributing a lot to not only the heat, the oppressive heat that was in portions of Alberta and Saskatchewan, but also into the interior of BC, that dry forecast. And we had the trough in the east. Now that has flip-flopped. We've got a bit of a trough in the west and a ridge in the east. So for eastern Canada, it does mean that slowly we're starting to see a warm-up that hasn't been all too forthcoming so far this year. But we're entering into more of a zonal pattern, which means things are going to be pretty quiet for the next week or so. Across the country this morning, if you're about to head out the door, this is where we're at, anywhere between about 5 and 21 degrees, depending on where you are. Atlantic Canada, risk of thunderstorms this afternoon for New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, but pretty quiet. Now, we've got those thunderstorms tracking across portions of eastern Ontario and southern Quebec. This persists for the rest of the day. West of that through southern Ontario, it's a bit drizzly this morning and foggy. More sunshine this afternoon. Northern Ontario looking pretty good, but there are heat warnings in effect. Look how far north we're seeing very warm temperatures and not much reprieve in the overnight hours. Thunderstorms around southern Ontario and then, southern Manitoba. Then we head into BC and we've got smoke from those fires picking up on our satellite picture. Widespread air quality advisories to BC and Alberta. If we can show the picture from Beth that I in and obviously deteriorated that air quality. So please keep that in mind. If you do have any respiratory issues, you'll likely want to stay indoors today if you're under that advisory. Now here's your local forecast. It's about as cold as that this morning. Thunder Bay has been as low as 5 this morning. Yep, it's July 17th. Okay, so here's our upper air pattern. A couple things to note with our upper air pattern. We've got a ridge that's sitting right over northern Ontario, and that's bringing very hot weather to communities right along Hudson Bay. Now, for western Canada, we've got this kind of southwesterly flow going on in our upper atmosphere, driving smoke right from the BC wildfires further north into the BC interior, but also spilling over the Rockies into Alberta as well. And so that is reducing air quality in 2 provinces. Over the next couple of days, we'll see more of a return to a zonal pattern, but we still get that westerly flow right across the Rockies, and so that proves to be troublesome in terms of air quality heading through the next couple of days. Canada, here are your current temperatures. It's anywhere from 9 to 21 degrees, depending on where you are. Iqaluit sitting at 4, though, much colder. In Atlantic Canada, we've got generally clear conditions, though drizzle and fog is possible right around St. John, New Brunswick, with the risk of thunderstorm in both New Brunswick and Nova Nova Scotia later on today. Those thunderstorms have been a bit troublesome for portions of eastern Ontario and southern Quebec over the last couple of hours, but generally diminishing. A little more sunshine into the afternoon across the region with a risk of thunderstorms later on. Now, northern Ontario, I mentioned that heat. There's our heat warning. As we slide over into the prairies, we've got some thunderstorms that are now departing Manitoba, pushing into northwest Ontario, so keep that in mind through the Thunder Bay region. And then western Canada, there's the smoke actually from the wildfires picking up on our satellite image. We don't often see that with this satellite picture. Our poor air quality advisory is still in place for BC and Alberta, so keep that in mind. This will persist for the next couple of days. Now here's a look at your local forecast.